Let's go!
I'm going to give full props to who eventually discovered this because he literally asked them. As I peruse the Twitter now, the story has kind of changed. There's an interesting development to this story of Capcom responding to the esports situation. So yeah, Brian posted a video, and I'm not going to review this so you guys can go watch it, but the inside scoop on the Capcom Cup fiasco. And long story short, yeah, the resident dude that runs Street Fighter at Capcom, Nakayama-san, responded to Brian's tweet. I'd highly recommend you watch Brian's video. What does this all mean, right? There's a reason why this is happening, and he kind of like broke down the situation for us. So yeah, okay, here it is. So it wasn't deleted. He said he might delete this, but it isn't. I would still highly recommend you check out Brian F's video, and a huge shout out to Brian for literally asking the dragon, right? I'm just gonna go confront the dragon. He said it doesn't seem strange that the esports division and the dev team could seem so entirely disconnected. Perhaps different monetization strategies could have resulted in with a collaboration rather than just changing the high price streaming for Capcom Cup. Yeah, a decent observation. Pretty much what I was trying to warn everybody when we first made that video. The esports divisions pretty much go under like a marketing budget in a lot of situations, and they get their own unique budget, especially if the esports stuff lasts a long time. It also, I think, falls under the same exact problem that we just saw with Mortal Kombat 1, where their final combat, their big, you know, Mortal Kombat World Tour finale thing did not meet expectations. And why is that? Why did it feel so under budgeted? Why did it feel so misunderstood? What happened there? What's going on? For the most part, what happened is that it's under a marketing budget. And how much marketing budget do you think exists with Mortal Kombat 1? In 2 years after the game came out? Probably nearly nothing, man. That event sounded like it was sort of like scrounged together to make it even happen and continue because the game effectively was done. Like they were kind of like done. So they had very little budget to do this, probably because the marketing budget for Mortal Kombat dried up. The same thing happens to Capcom with their esports division. I remember having direct conversations with the folks in Capcom USA. This is like 10 years ago, right? Around Street Fighter V to Street Fighter 4 time, where they were having different offices and sort of building up an esports division at Capcom, which was almost separate from Capcom USA. And that was like, that's weird that you guys are actually separate from Capcom USA. And they're like, yeah, we're doing our own thing in a completely different area and like making things happen, getting marketing dollars, making sponsors happy, all that kind of stuff, right? So already Capcom USA is a big subdivision of what Capcom Japan is, right? A lot of what Capcom USA has to do is sort of get the stuff that the Japanese developers do and make it appealing and interesting and distribute it in other regions, especially like America. So it was crazy to me that even at that time, 10 plus years ago, their esports efforts were already very disconnected from the already very disconnected aspect of Capcom, right? Moving forward a whole bunch, there wasn't a ton, like not an absolute massive amount of like esportsification to Capcom stuff around Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5 era. Most of that was being done like in the US, right? And getting Japanese players over here, getting Japanese players to go to events. But in Street Fighter 6, not the case. It was clear that there is a booming market for Street Fighter 6, as we explained. And yeah, they're kind of in their own unique bubble. They're kind of in their own unique situation. And I had to remind people that like, yeah, esports divisions are quite different. I had the assumption, I wonder what the Capcom devs feel about this. And I had to remind people several times, this isn't technically Capcom making this decision. It is technically them because it's under their umbrella, right? But these are big companies with a whole bunch of efforts going into games across the world. They're a worldwide company. They're not just a Japanese company. I had to remind people several times over that like the Street Fighter team, if not the teams that actually make these games, have nothing to do with the esports side of them. You might get some commentators or some announcers that somewhat line up with that stuff, but they're usually extremely separate from how this stuff normally operates. And again, we talked about how previous games sort of fixed this by putting in content and skins that sort of assisted and paid for them, like they were sort of like handshaking and synonymous with each other and working together to make their big esportsification work. So Nakayama-san says, yeah, it's pretty much true. We're very separate. Revenue targets, assigned tasks, different fundamentally by department. Even the development team was surprised by this announcement. At least Matsumoto and I were, as we were shocked at the venue when they found out about it. Yeah, it's boiling down to a point where now They're aware of what's going on, and a marketing esports division has nothing to do with like the game design aspect, much less the game development side. So, that said, this matter occurred within the same company, under the same umbrella, so of course they're discussing it. We apologize for any concern this may have caused, and people follow up with, thank you for the transparency, we fans of the game wish for the best, and both profit for the community and esports. Was there no discussion in reviving the CPT costumes and stages that can support Capcom and Street Fighter 6 like in the past? No, there wasn't. Interesting. When things get bigger, you can't have like the director of the game or even the director of the brand on top of everything. That's impossible. It's like saying Ed Boon is running every single thing that's happening at Warner Brothers and NetherRealm for Mortal Kombat. No, dude, that's not the way it works. It's too big. I hear the same thing all the time where it's like, Monster Hunter is making a whole bunch of money, or said game is making a whole bunch of money. That means that Street Fighter or some other game is going to get a bunch more support, right? So they're going to fix Monster Hunter, right? That's how, no, dude. No, there is no interdepartmental communication happening in live product. That's not how this stuff works, dude. You can share info. Teaching the other teams, information is one thing, but teaching people how to fix things is a completely different situation. Also, creating the documentation for this stuff is something that doesn't just naturally happen. You need to create documentation that makes sense and doesn't screw up the other project. Like, that easily could happen. Nakayama not even getting a memo about like, hey, so could you guys make costumes so we can budget this? He's like, no, we never even talked about that. We were just doing our own thing. Maybe if there's one good thing that'll happen from this is that it will spark those conversations, you know? He even assumes that if he talks too much about this publicly, he might get scolded at work and has to delete the tweets and stuff like that. So either way, I don't think this is a damning or dangerous situation. I think what it really is boiling down to is the fact that this company is big, dude. They have so many different departments across the board trying to compartmentalize like everything they're doing and figure out what's going on. Maybe this is an effort that goes above him. The initiatives we implement in the previous title, that was a proposal from the dev team. It was tough but fun. Since then, the organization has grown significantly, and various departments have been established. Main responsibilities now are improving the game's content, enhancing the quality of the merchandise and collabs, and working on movies and other video projects and stuff, which he's obviously doing. But also keep discussing ways to improve things, even just a little, with other departments. Why is this relevant to what's going on? We literally saw another developer where this stuff is way too big, has gotten so large, and has so many different esports and side departments and different elements to it, and it's Tekken. There was a massive communication issue about game design and balance, things that affected the game directly, and they did not hit the appropriate people at the right time, and a season patch went out with season 2 that was very disconnected from everything they had been discussing and very different than what was seemingly going to be executed. What we're looking at is growing pains right now, especially Capcom and Tekken, who have had some weird miscommunications with their audience based on what they plan to do, how they treat the audience, all that kind of stuff. To me, when I heard this news, I was like, this sounds so unlike Nakayama-san and Matsumoto-san, who are like the guys that are running Capcom fighting games right now. I'm like, this sounds like something they would likely never approve. I wonder what they think about this. I wonder if this was done with any consideration of theirs, and we find out that it wasn't, dude. With any of their knowledge of it even taking place, and when they found out about it, they found out the same time that all of us did. It's like, we see this time and time happen again in this industry where you feel like the people that are directly involved in these games would have updates and news and information about big efforts, if not giant, huge swaths of marketing or changes happening to your development, but they usually find out the same time everybody else does. And it's like, what? I do think that there needs to definitely be a lot more communication. Are they rolling back the feet? No, dude. There's no announcement of them rolling it back, but it is clear that from the Street Fighter dev team that this isn't exactly cool and kind of goes against what they would want to do. It also was revealed not that much longer after this stuff happened that the esports side of Capcom Street Fighter 6 stuff in Japan, the esports division, is maybe not making a ton of money. A lot of their efforts are costing so many millions of dollars to produce and get venues and do all this stuff and get sponsors and to pay for the thing. But at the same time, they are also not running a super great track record of making a lot of profit on this. And it's just costing them a lot more money than it is actually making it profitable, which has always been the esports problem, right? And for anybody that doesn't understand, like, where is the issue with esports and fighting games combining with grassroots stuff? That's pretty much it. The issue comes down to that this stuff is very hard to sustain. And why is that scary? Well, it's like, yeah, just get the bag and go, right? Well, the problem with that is that you have all this interest and all this money suddenly entering a space, right, that revolves around fighting games, which is great because we're all just celebrating and there's all this big stuff happening. But at the same point, you do that, and once the money goes away, what happens? What happens to that entire competitive community once the esports money leaves, dude? You pretty much start at ground zero. You have to find ways to support stuff. You have to find ways to make money to put on more tournaments, like all that kind of stuff, right? And that rebuilding process, a lot of people might not want to do that shit. The same people that were putting on all these events and figuring out the logistics and doing all this stuff in the past might not want to do that stuff, much less Capcom might not want to do this stuff in the future. So anyway, that's the issue with like the larger esportsification. This is a multi-issued problem that's sort of happening here. And right now, Capcom Esports is effectively bigger than it ever has been. But even that being said, might not be making the money and meeting the demands of the revenue that they need to hit to make it sustainable in any way. Very much a defender of the Street Fighter development team. I've had conversations with these people. They don't seem like they would want to as much deal in nickel and dime in ways like this that feel this way. And we've called them out on that, man. Like even costume pricing and stuff on that in the past. I don't think many of us wish for the worst of these companies and for them to effectively disappear and for like these projects to disappear or these esports divisions. We don't want that to happen, dude. I think we all want to create a reality where this is sustainable and it can work, but without trying to reach a bit too far. Take everything out of the bank for it to happen. We want to see it actually work in a way that doesn't frustrate people and can, you know, exist without it feeling scummy. I think there's clearly an avenue for that to exist because the thing that people want the most from Street Fighter is to buy more costumes. That's the craziest part, is that everyone's relationship with Street Fighter 6 right now is that, buddy, you don't have enough ways for us to even give you money. What I truly hope happens at the end of this, obviously, is that there's a rescind on that issue and they find a way to support this. Capcom Cup isn't until like, what, February or something like that? What is the best case that can happen for this is that this gets the Street Fighter dev team and the esports team to talk to each other. It gets them to actually communicate a little bit more. It gets the dev team, hey, how quickly can you guys, can we whip up some colors? Hey, how quickly can we whip up an esports package similar to how we did in Street Fighter 5, where there was much less paths of approval to make that stuff happen? But potentially within the next 6 months, that could possibly take place and allow them to release a package where you can buy something to support their esports division.